All right. Hi, this is Akash Verma. Let's get started. I would like to introduce the first speaker, who's Vibhas Vinay Kotwal. So Vibhas is an experienced data scientist. He has been a business analyst, a product manager, and a writer. So he has brought with him a lot of experience of about 14 years working with different analytics problems, different domains, geographies, and skills. He actually started his analytics journey while he was working with his wife towards child psychology problems, and that's where his interest in analytics started, and that's where he kind of took it up forward. So he has built a lot of POCs during his career, and one of the things that has always excited him is to take those POCs and make it live, make it to production. So that's what he intends to talk about today. And his topic is A Tale of Trek, taking a POC to the product. Well, we'll be understanding how to take a proof of concept, effectively a data science POC, and take it to production. So over to you, Vibhas.
Hi Akash, good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, Vibhas, good morning. You're audible.
Okay.
It's you as
Thank you very much for introducing with kind words. Without any statistical analysis, I can say that am I audible? Is my screen shared? And sorry, I was on mute. Certainly one of the most spelled out sentences in current times after good morning and good evening. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Vibhas Vinay Kotwal, and I would be talking on a topic, a tale of a track, taking a POC to the product. Um, I'm really fortunate enough to speak at this esteemed dais where we have all the eminent speakers in the field of analytics, those who have experience and those who have academics as well. The session that I'm going to have here has essentially two parts. One is about the business process overview of analytical journey that everyone goes through. And the another one is the core topic that we have, which is how to take a POC to the product level. And these two topics actually relate to three different kind of audience that we have right now in this conference in a form of participant or a speaker. Number one, all the business leaders who work with the data scientist and who invest in the data science product and the solutions. Also, data science experts who actually implement and make this happen, all the data science products. And the next level is all the aspirant data scientists who are starting their journey. So certainly there is a takeaway for all the three categories of audience. Okay, moving on. Short intro for me. So as Akash already mentioned that I started my statistical journey while helping my wife in the psychological project that she was doing. And that actually helped me understanding the importance of statistics. Having a strong background of business analysis actually helped me to break down the business problems into the data problem and find a solution for that. And then statistics actually helped me learning machine learning and finding the inference of different numbers that pop up during our analysis. In addition to this analytical journey, the other side is the creative side where I write stories, short movies, and poetry. I'm also a calligrapher. And analytics is certainly a bridge for me where I see that the analytical side and the creative side actually joins in. Currently, I am a product manager for analytics in one of the top Fortune 500 companies. And I'm really delighted to share my views here in my personal capacity. The session that I bring in here is actually tabling the learnings from my academics and my personal experience and experiments. A quick overview about data science. So data science is actually a stream where we have all the discipline, principle, processes, technology for understanding the phenomena of analysis of the data, where the data is being used to make the data-driven decisions. When we talk about data, one of the four Forbes articles that mentions is there is 2.5 million terabytes of data that's being created every day at a current pace. I think it's huge. And in this, we see that it's going to increase even on a faster rate with all the um, IoT things that we have and over 4 billion internet users. Data also mentions that the last 2 years have contributed to around 90% of the total data that's generated around the world. Sure. Let's see in detail how it actually evolved. So business knowledge in the business domain was always there. And as it grew, maths and statistics was utilized to manage it. And this was a traditional research where numbers were used to find the inference and assessment and all the estimates. On the other side, on the matured business domain, when computers came in, it utilized computer and the entire IT system to make the entire operation smoother, more organized. And that's where the software development came into picture. On the other hand, where statistics was in place and computer came into picture, using these two, statistician used the computer to scale up the calculation, to expedite their calculation and improvise on the speed of the implementation. And that's where the machine learning and all the algorithms, they came into picture. In this, when we combine all of these, we see that the intersection of all these things is a data science. And that's where it brings in best of all the worlds and it helps us to create solutions. Now let's see what are the different ways data science influences our lives. Actually, it influences in many of the domains. Here are some of the domains that I would like to bring for the discussion. Retail, media, telecom, government, and there are many other, health sector, automobiles, aviation, and whatnot. And here I'm just sharing only a few, and I would be touching upon some of the interesting use cases that we have. The first one that we have here is about the recommendation system. It's about marketing personalizations in retail and content recommendation on the media. I'm pretty sure that we all are seeking out for good recommendations for binge watching in this lockdown time. What it does is it gives you suggestion based on the pattern that is generated by the usage, whether it is a purchasing pattern or whether it is a viewership pattern. So it actually analyzes the similar kind of product, and on the other side, it actually looks for us people who have watched with the similar taste that we have, and it recommends on that basis. The another interesting use case is where we have the sentiment analysis. It is very important to read between the lines when the customers are talking about it. What are the customer saying about a product or any service? And the last one here is something that is really that I love. And this is about smart city surveillance, because this directly impacts the citizen of a country. And what we see here is with this use case, with this implementation, with this solution, government would be able to make proactive maintenance, as well as this will help all the governments to implement the better law and order with surveillance on the street crime and other things. These are only few use cases. I'm pretty sure that while we are sitting here, there may be 100 of more use cases that may be coming to our mind. How are these use cases actually implemented? So there is a process that is being followed. It looks like quite a linear process. Let's go through this structured process, and we will see all the steps here. So framing a business problem, then formulating the analytical strategy, data processing, and then making a proof of concept, making a minimum viable product, and then launching a product finally. What we are going to do is we will look into each and every section in little detail so that it will set a stage for all the exciting and thought-provoking sessions that we have ahead in a day. Framing a problem is really important because it allows data scientists to understand the problem faced by a business. Also, it helps establishing an alignment since very beginning with the all stakeholders. What is the next level? The next level is on the strategy. This is where we formulate a hypothesis, where we set our objectives, and we also do exploratory data analysis, where we see in details what the data is, how the data is managed, or how the data is it skewed, how the distribution is. It gives us more information about the existing data. The next is data processing. This is where we acquire the data, we transform the data, and we do a lot of feature engineering. Acquiring data requires getting data from various sources. Transforming involves doing imputation, finding missing values, making sure that the data is cleaned up, it is transformed, it is standardized for the usage. And in feature engineering, we create new features based on the features that we have, something that makes more sense for our models. Proof of concept. This is, I would say, the most glamorous phase of the entire process. No doubt we have models in this, pun intended, and this is where we experiment a lot. So it starts with all the algorithms, where we decide on which algorithm we want to use in here based on the use case. We see different models, we make models, and we use the existing data. We train our model based on the existing data that's in there. We test how the performance has been, and then we evaluate our models with different matrices. May it be a confusion matrix or ROC matrix. There are various ways we evaluate our models, and we ensure that we have a proper model. We have all the data in place. We have all the cleaned up data that is required, and everything is placed to go a step ahead to MVP, which is a minimum viable product. Minimum viable product is a product in itself, which has minimum number of feature, but still usable by any user. It may not have a fancy feature with it, cool features with it, but it is something that a user can use. The most important thing here is to seek the feedback, because this is a key state to test the waters and understand from the user how usable it is for them. Here, we improve a model as soon as possible, and then we redeploy it. And as we do that, we move to our next step, something for which we started our journey, which is launching a product. In this case, though it looks like quite a linear process, this is what our expectation is. Drawing an analogy to our Bollywood movies, a poor guy likes a girl, he proposes a girl, and girl accepted, and then they live happily ever after. But since the movie is not like that, so is this process, and the reality looks something like this, where we see that we have to go not just forward, but also backward. We have to jump some steps here, and then we realize that was not a good idea. And then we again go back 2 steps. And this is quite a convoluted journey rather than a very linear one. This is full of drama and fun.
Hi, Vibhas.
Hi.
This is Akash. Can you hear me? So there are a few questions which are trickling in, and I would like to jump on in them before we continue
Yeah, sure.
further. So I would like to specifically take few of them, two of them actually. And the first is that we talked about POCs and proof of concept, and then you touched upon minimum viable product, how it is really just a basic set of features that are marketable. So how do you effectively differentiate between a proof of concept and a minimal viable product?
Sure.
That's the first question.
Yeah, sure. So proof of concept is something that we use to prove out any concept, any technology, any use case, test out a feasibility. Is it even possible? This is more of a data scientist in a world where a thought came in and data scientist wanted to really test out, is it even possible? So that's what the proof of concept is. And the key difference is only a very limited data, a test data is used here. And minimum viable product, as I mentioned, this is something which has a minimum feature that's required for any product. Here, the data is not a test data. It is a real data that's lying out there. The users are the real users who are going to use this. And that's where we get the feedback. So proof of concept is more about whether this can be done, and minimum viable product is how are we doing and what are the things that we really need to groom to make this as a full-fledged product.
All right. So one more question before we move on. So
Mhm.
the your loop and your back loop about reality is pretty interesting, and there are questions about data flowing in from the product launch to going back to previous steps such as formulating the analytic strategy or data processing. Can you briefly touch upon this as to why this is necessary and under what scenarios you would want to take the data effectively, which is already productionized, take a model which is already running live, and take it back to again for a data processing or the analytics queue as such?
Yeah, sure. So in this scenario, this is something about where we learn from how the data exists. And this could be a practical scenario with everyone. The world looks different with the test data. And when we actually productionize it, we may see that the volume of data or the type of data or the data anomaly that we did not identify in the original version or the test version that we had is actually existing in the production. So we may have to mock up our data according to the data that's in production, or we may have to really mock up our data to the scale or the volume that exists on the production. In that particular scenario, we will have to try out different things. We will have to change our strategies based on how the production is working on. There could be a possibility where we realize that any certain feature is not that appropriate for business. So we may have to try out a different technology in our POC version and again redeploy a certain feature with different technology or different way of working.
Good, good. All right, good, Vibhas. Thank you, thank you. Please continue.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot. Okay, moving on to the next section that we have here, and we start our journey, which is taking a POC to the product. And I would be taking you through different interesting challenges that we have here. And I'm pretty sure that experienced data scientist and all the business leader would really correlate and concur with all these different aspects here. So what we see here is that in the linear process, we realize that that the process is not a linear one. It is actually a convoluted one. And that actually proves a point that this is not a vanilla drive. It is actually a trek full of challenges. And what we have seen here is that while the journey is from proof of concept to a product, we see different interesting things. What I have done here is I have suggested some of the solutions to it. So there is no right way of approaching it since I have tried multiple POCs. So I brought up with some of the solutions that worked for me. I would highly encourage, if you wish, you can share your experience and your learnings with me offline. The first one. So we start a journey of a POC since we are a self-starter. Um, we see that, okay, there is an idea and there is a very secretive mission that I want to start with the available domain knowledge and the available data. We start our journey and we create a proof of concept. We share this with our SMEs and business, which we think would be a game changer. But the unique idea was actually already explored. And in this, what we understand is that there is some other team who actually tried out this particular idea. They have already made a model out of it. So there is no need to be bogged down. What is important is to learn from that model, to actually learn different things that they have tried, something that we have missed, and include these things here. The idea is not to create a POC on a first number, but to make it better. Here what we see the next level is when we have created our POC, when we talk to business, the practical scenario could be where business says, you may not even know the actual business problem. Business may ask, do you even know what we are going through? What is the challenge that we are facing? And this is specifically a scenario where we are self-starters. And as we are moving towards more collaborative manner, we create our own POCs and then we reach out to business rather than the traditional way where we take a requirement and implement what has been shared by the business. The two different perspectives to deal with this is number one, the business really knows what they want. And we take this as an opportunity to understand the business even deeper. The human-centric design is also important, which is a second perspective. There could be a possibility where business knows their area very well, since they are so much into that particular process, so much into their idea, they may not discover some of the problems that actually exist. Though we don't have much of the knowledge where we strive to learn the business knowledge even deeper, we actually take this as an opportunity to bring a fresh perspective as well, where we can discover some of the problems that business did not realize. And then we can design things which are more human centric. I really like the first slide where Archie was talking about, and it said centered around you. This is something which is very important from a designing perspective. And a classic example that we have here that I would like to bring in, you may have seen this example, or at least on your breakfast table about a ketchup bottle. We all know the struggle of taking out the ketchup out of a bottle by tapping it multiple times. Also squeezing out even the last drop of the ketchup out of the bottle. There are two challenges here. Number one, the cap is on the top. Number two, the bottle is made with glass. Someone realized it and they came up with another design. I'm pretty sure no one ever complained for it, but this is something about user experience, where the bottle is not changed to the more flexible material, and the cap is made on a flip side, which really helps to take out the ketchup on the plate. Another challenge that we may face is isolation of business functions. What I mean is, for example, let's take one example where we created a POC, and here I would take example for retail analytics, where assuming we created a POC for customer churn, we reach out to marketing team mentioning that, okay, there is a capability to identify particular customer who are going to churn out from the system. They are going to move out from the regular customer base. And the marketing team says, okay, that's a good idea. It's better you reach out to the sales team who can provide you the actual data of the invoice, something that you can use to analyze. So the orange dot that we see, I use this as a metaphor for a data scientist, certainly something, a shiny object. Then sales team says that, okay, this is the data, but I think you should also look at the loyalty data. You should reach out to customer service team where they can tell you about who are the customer who has the loyalty card and other information. Probably that may help you reach out to customer service team. They say the most number of customers complaints that we get is actually missing inventory or the inventory that is not available. Here, they send you to the inventory team. They said, okay, inventory is absolutely fine. Why don't you reach out to the supply chain? I think that would be a good idea because there is a lot of that is required at the supply chain department. And then you reach out to supply chain. Then they mention, I think you should reach out to marketing team where they should create a campaign, something that can be really deliver based on the availability and the logistics that is feasible. In this entire journey, the good part is, as a business analyst or as a data scientist or as a product owner, we reached out to various locations. We reached out to various departments, learned their things. But the one thing that we miss out or may miss out is the actual objective with which we actually started. Here, it is important to stay focused on the objective and have your own perspective as well. This is where sticking to the basics, where formulating the hypothesis and defining the business objective or the scope is very important. Next one is something where I'm pretty sure that many of the experienced data scientists and business leaders would confess that they have really spent their sweat and blood in this entire process, getting the right data, access issues, data volume, cleaning up the data. As a process, it usually takes somewhere around 70 to 80% of the total time to get the right data, evaluating it, and then enhancing it, and then cleaning it up and making sure that it is in place. I will take one example again here. And as I mentioned, the more data is not always good. It is really important to spend generous time in cleaning up the data. In the previous example, where a data scientist moved from one location to another, there is a fair chance this data scientist started with, let's say, 20 different features, which are the different data points. And as someone suggested, he or she kept adding those feature or those data points to the model, and the data actually grew to a big volume, maybe from 15, 20 or 50 data points is actually grew up to 80 or 100 data points. But how does that impact the model? This is also important to understand. There is a possibility that to an extent, the accuracy of a model went up, but there may be a chance where the accuracy went down from a certain point. Here, another thing that is important is from accessing the data, instead of going out to different sources and requesting access, certainly that takes a lot of time, and it really works as an impediment in the entire process. As an organization, what many organizations are trying is to create a platform and a data lake where a lot of data is already available that actually reduces the time to acquire the data and cleaning up the data. different languages that we speak. When we work in data scientist community, it is very easy for us to use jargons. But when we reach out to business, there is a fair possibility we keep using those terms as well. For example, 95% of confidence in a certain model. But it is also important to translate that data science jargon into a business language. I will take an interesting example here. For example, if there is an automated car and a data scientist says that there is a 95% confidence being safe in this particular car. Another way to perceive this is that there are 5% chances of having an accident. Someone may really question that there are still 5% chances. Is it really safe? So the key here is to translate into practical scenario where we are comparing this with the scenario where the case is that the automated model is not there, rather than comparing it to the 100%. Certainly, this may improve over a period of time. So talking the same language or translating the language that a business user would understand is very important. We implemented the POC, we deployed it in the form of minimum viable product. We are waiting for the feedback. That's what the scenario is. And we expect that the business would share the valuable feedback with us. But the reality is the business is still using the traditional system. No fault of the business in this case. There may be a genuine reason behind using the traditional system. We may have had any number of interview session or a focus group session with them to understand their requirements. But the situation is they are still very habitual to the old system that they have. Or the other scenario is there could be a genuine fear in their mind of losing a particular job that they are doing. So as a data scientist or as a product owner or a product manager or any solution provider, it is a responsibility to highlight the importance of a model that would enhance their work and not replace them. I will take one interesting example here that I read in one of the articles. This is from the healthcare. Will AI replace doctors when we start predicting what kind of disease it is, what kind of symptoms they are? The answer is certainly no. AI won't replace doctors, but doctors with AI would certainly replace those who don't have that. As the time is changing, we would be able to unleash the potential of analytics going forward. I will take one example here, which is something that came from my personal experience, and this is about a habit. Probably this would certainly help you understand the concept that I'm talking about, empathizing this user and observing the pain area, something that no one highlighted. Especially in the Indian dining scenario, as we go to any restaurant, they have this beautiful dining setup, and then they come and then they place a smaller plate on the left-hand side. And this is my personal experience. Maybe you will also relate to it. Every single time I have to switch the plate from the left side to right side so that I can keep a roti on it or any other bread for eating it with any curry or any other sauce that I have with me for a dinner or a lunch. Now, I always realize why the scenario looks like that. They always keep the plate on a left side and I have to switch it on a right side. It's just a matter of habit, because probably this dining system or arranging the dining table, it came from Europe, and there they have a bread on the left side and salad or a soup on a right side where they eat it with spoon and the bread with the left hand. It's just a matter of habit. Isn't it interesting? The next slide that I have, I'm pretty sure that this will bring smile on many experience as well as many data scientists who are working on POCs. It's about funding and business alignment. This is the moment of truth for us. So in this scenario, while we take a POC, we should come up with a holistic approach. We need to bring in end-to-end business case in this scenario. We need to bring in what is the feasibility of implementation, as well as what is the ROI that any organization would take up. When we make our POC, it is also important that we don't think in silos. We need to think about a scenario where we see how this particular POC actually fits in the entire ecosystem of different POCs. For example, if you take our the same example that we took earlier, customer churn. Implementing customer churn would only give us a scenario where we would identify a customer who are going to churn out. Here, a store layout is also an important factor that may contribute to it. On customer service, a personalized recommendation may also play a good role. On the inventory department, a smart inventory would also play a good role to support customer retention where the product is available, and the optimized supply chain would also help us. When we implement our MVP, as I already mentioned, and thankfully there was one question related to this, this slide actually talks about that. When we implemented it, it is very important to take that feedback from the business customer. There may be a low accuracy at that particular time because the data is behaving different. We have to go back, we have to mock up our data and fix these issues. Maybe the environmental issue is also a different case. Okay, here is the last slide that I have. We created our POC and we thought that it's going to really change the world, but somehow all the time that we took and when we came up with the entire POC and we wanted to implement it, there is a market change, there is a scenario change, and there is no more need for this particular POC. I'm pretty sure that when we try hundreds of POC, there are only a few that reaches to the product level. Does it mean that all the other POCs that were there did not contribute? It did. It did contribute to the learnings. It did contribute to our experience. In this scenario, my suggestion would be to fail early, fail fast, but learn faster. And don't wait too long to deploy any particular POC. The perfect model is actually a myth. When we put it in a system, it actually helps us to understand how the system is behaving and update it, improve it in an iterative model. And the last thing here is make a healthy and a deep backlog. I'm pretty sure that when we create our POC, we are too emotional about that. In this particular scenario, having a healthy backlog really helps us to move on to the next POC that we are going to work on. I will quote a line from movie Rang De Basanti here. This is not the end, this is the beginning. And there was a very important thing that was shared during the video that was played is about being a good human. And that is where I would close by saying that as I speak to all the influencers, analysts, analytical enthusiasts, and all the change catalysts, it is very important to understand the power that we have in our hand. The models that we talk about, I'm pretty sure we are going to talk about different technology and different use case in our coming sessions. But the technologies that we are using are actually deriving its root from 17th century, 18th century. So what has actually changed in this particular time. It is the availability of the data, both structured and unstructured, the technology to scale it up on a large volume in a very short time, and the open source environment and the community learning that we have right now. I would like to quote Yuval Noah Harari from Sapiens, where he mentioned that the key difference between the humans and the ape was the longer thumb, where it gave humans the ability to use the tools. It actually resulted in using or creating a fire, using it for cooking, and then that cooking actually resulted in faster digestion. The faster digestion actually helped to reduce the size of the intestine. It became smaller, and all the energy then was um, driven to brain, and that actually led to the imagination. And with that imagination, um, humans actually evolved on a way faster rate as compared to other species who were existing. And probably they also resulted in extinction of other species such as mammoth and other human species. At this particular time, we again stand at a juncture where we have a great power in our hand, which is of data. It is important to use analytics to be more inclusive and make this world a better place. Thank you very much.
All right, great talk, Vibhas. Thank you for taking time and talking. Let's go through the series of questions that we have, and you also have some appreciations. I think people, I can read, and one of the people, one of the attendees is saying that it's amazing how you are explaining everything and taking examples from real life, and it's a great session, and he's able to relate with his actual POC experience. And there's another gentleman who's talking that this is just the start of data science, and you're rightly explained. So great talk. I think audience has loved it too. Let me go over to a few of the questions and a couple of, in the interest of time, I'll just try and take the few and the best ones that have been published. There's another one who says that she has, Meenal has loved your connection and you have made everything about being a good human and honoring human values, which is nice. Let's just jump to the questions part. All right. So the first question, Vibhas, is that how would you take that data science is impacting human lives at the most granular level of the society? Maybe you can take an example from your work that you have done with your wife in child psychology. That could be a great example to share here.
Yeah, sure. I would love to share that. Um, so any kid that works on their academics, mostly when we choose our career, it is driven by what neighbors are doing, what parents are teaching them, what cousins are doing. So this particular project was essentially to identify the learning pattern as well as the career pattern, which is from the aptitude side. So it involved these two things. The example that I would take here is in a certain class in a school where a particular kid, when during the class, is actually looking outside the window, looking at a playground. And if I go back some 20 years back, where out of love, I think the teacher would really throw a chalk on that particular student. Why are you looking out? I think you should pay attention here. That's the point that actually triggered this entire process. And I will take this example where not necessarily every kid is equipped to learn just through visual or verbals. There is a kinetic way of learning as well. To understand the parameter of a circle, not necessarily one has to look into the board or hear or listen to any teacher. Someone may run around any particular ground and understand what the circle is and how much the parameter is. So there are different learning patterns, and on our granular level, I think it is very important to design our education system with this knowledge, where instead of having section ABC based on a date of birth or aptitude or any other thing, probably there is a need to utilize the learning pattern of a kid where the learning can be maximized by changing the way of teachings.
Great example, Vibhas. I think that's again you humanizing and honoring human values. Let's move on to a different question, a little more from an integration standpoint. So a gentleman asks that how can we, or a lady, how can we integrate latest technologies with traditional business systems? So I think the intent is to understand the possibilities of synergies with older and legacy technologies, and then being able to still do analytics and do data science along the way, and how to do some form of an integration. So maybe you can share your experience as a product manager there.
Yeah, sure. So while moving from traditional system to new um, technology or a new way of doing it, um, the key factor is that we are biased towards the older thing that are there, but the new things also looks little shiny. Not just about analytics. If we take an example, a book that we have read and the movie that we watch, we always feel that the book was better. And new operating system, when it comes to our system, we always feel that the older system was way better than the new one. The same happens with the new technology when we are implementing it. It is important to have a solid ground on the older functionality that we have, but it is also important to unleash the potential of a new technology. Probably there were some hindrances in the older technology that really act as an impediment, looking for an opportunity where we see that a new technology may really ease our way. To be very honest, on a practical experience, as you talked about, there could be a scenario where the older technology may be working better than the new one. But we will have to really have some patience at this particular stage, because the technology is also grooming. The technology is maturing based on our feedback. Being change catalyst, it is our responsibility to pass on this feedback to all the different stakeholders, contributing it to the technology itself. As we see, the reason Python has become the most popular language for data scientists is because people have really contributed in terms of libraries and other things to this language and really made it better with every passing day.
All right. I think this is important that you touched upon Python and as a language, because it has pretty much become the de facto standard around data science and machine learning stuff. And I think I'll be talking about these things, integration, largely tomorrow in my talk around architecture. But maybe if we could share a little journey, Vibhas, from your professional experience around how did you achieve some sort of transformation where you had a legacy system, and what are the thoughts of things that you imagined and executed, or also the kind of concerns that you had to validate with business or with different stakeholders when doing with technology? It could be business oriented, it could be technology oriented, something on those lines, Subhas.
Yes, please. So when we are moving from a legacy systems to the new systems that we have in place, the reason we have a lot of data today is because of all these legacy systems. So over the years, we have actually acquired all the data because of the legacy systems. Though the data is there, though the systems are there, it is important to start with the business need. Probably the business need changed over a period of time. It is important to understand, is the market change over a period of time? And in this particular scenario, I would simply quote where Bertrand Russell, I think he mentioned that when he was asked who is the most intelligent person, he said that my tailor, and someone asked, oh, why do you think so? He said, every time I go to my tailor, he takes the measurement every single time. I always say that I'm still the same. And he says that, no, you are not. The same applies to our systems. When we start from our business need, it actually leads us to the right solution. Technology, from unleashing the technology potential perspective, not just for proving a use case in a business. that this technology can do that. It is important to try out technology, but it is also important, do we really cater to the business need? Because when we talk about implementing a product, we always have a scenario where money and time are also constrained in addition to our aspirations. So that's the practical aspect of it.
All right. So I think there's one more question. We'll come back to this topic of probably in the next few minutes. But there's a very interesting question that has trickled, and again, I'm assuming you have worked in analytics and you have experience working with different set of people. So there's a presumption that developers do not understand business processes, and one of the attendees is asking why is it something that is taken for granted that developers might not understand business process and might develop something that doesn't bake into the needs or the requirements of the business. Did you? I know this is a little bit off topic, but I think in the essence of analytics, it's even more important because we must, as a team, always be in sync with what the business wants and what we as technologists are effectively trying to prove. So, any thoughts on that?
Yes, I do have. And again, I would quote some great example here.
Wow.
In a biography for Steve Jobs, he mentioned that I am happy that I am not an engineer. I am happy that I am not a designer, because now I can think like a customer. And
Wow.
that's where he came up with the ideas that were more customer centric. And as in the current scenario, we are moving from the traditional roles of the developers or tester or a business analyst or a project manager. We are moving towards more cross-functional roles that we have. There is no escape from moving from what customer is thinking. We need to get into their shoes. We really need to empathize with them and understand what are they trying to solve. It's not about understanding the business completely, but it is something where we really need to understand their perspective. This is certainly going to enhance the way we code. It is certainly going to enhance the way create solutions.
Okay. Certainly. Thanks for taking that. I see we are getting more question and okay, can you define data science in one line with an example of someone who doesn't understand technology? Well, this is very right into your area of being a writer. So a challenge for you.
Yeah. So I will give you a very practical and a very simple way of explaining this.
Yeah, one line is
Um,
the constraint that you have to live with.
my father says the moment I see YouTube, it actually gives me what I really want to see. That's what the power of data science is. He
Wow.
does not know what the recommendation system is. But he says that when I watch some music videos, it actually gives me music videos of my taste. So making a life better with the previous patterns, that's what the data science is. If I have to take it to the another, sorry for exceeding one line limit, but um, even we work as a model because we are learning through the experiences, and that what the data is. We keep optimizing our behavior. We keep optimizing our responses to the situation based on the experiences that we have. We are the live models that are going, and I think data science would take inspiration from humans and then implement different solutions.
Yep, I think these two are very important things that you mentioned that effectively trying to solve people problems. And I really like the way your father explains it. It's like there's a concept in which I've recently learned called ELI5, and it's also a Python library, by the way, which is explain me like I'm five. And I think it's a great example of saying that how I want to see what I want to see on YouTube is what YouTube is giving me, and that's behind the scenes could be recommender engine, data science, deep learning, and all those sorts of things. But at the end, what data science really is about giving people some value, and this kind of also correlates with the example that you said about not using technology to just prove a point, but instead trying to make sure does the business need it, does the market really needs it, and also in current times of COVID, this has become a really difficult challenge to identify as to what sort of things do we do to make sure that our business is up and running and the demand and supply chain is maintained, and the status quo of the demand and supply chain is effectively maintained. So any thoughts on the more recent trends and the current pandemic situation that we are dealing with? Any directions from a business insights perspective that you have to had in your own operation, your business operations, effectively around analytics and data science?
It's an important time in terms of the phase we are going. So there is a lot of uncertainty. There is a lot of data that's floating around in terms of number of people infected and lives lost because of this. It is very important to understand that even if the economy is going into recession, people are going into depression. It is important to understand that having empathy with people is important. On the other side, this is a time from a data analysis perspective where we can actually groom ourselves. We can really prepare for a time that's coming ahead. I would refer to Newton during a plague where he was in a kind of lockdown and he discovered calculus at that particular time. This is a time where we actually need to go back to our basic. We really need to work on our concept, something that would really change the world in the coming time. That is something that I would recommend from a learning perspective. Keeping patience while the uncertainties are there, honing skills, and having a retrospective view for our systems that are in place right now. I'm pretty sure that we have some extra time as compared to the pre-lockdown time that we have. At least we avoid a lot of time on the traveling right now. I think in this particular time, we can utilize this phase to make sure that we have the right scale. We have looked into our systems. We declutter our things that are not required and be prepared for the exciting time that is coming ahead.
Great. I think great talk, Vibhas. Just a message from Nilakshi, who's our co-founder. She says, excellent presentation, Vibhas. Many thanks for echoing so much with the DAO-centric way of working and being. It really, really resonates with the way whom we are as DAO-centric folks, or as we call ourselves as DAOsians. Very practical session for her as well, so thank you. I also love your email ID, which is artistofanalytics@gmail.com instead of data scientist Vibhas Vinay Kotwal @gmail.com or something like that. So great presentation, Vibhas. I think we are right on time. Thank you. On behalf of DAO-centric, I thank you for being participating and helping speak with our people and folks. So thank you. So we had, just to share some statistics, we had over 100 people participating in this talk, and it has been great for all of them, I think, hearing about it.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity for sharing my thought with all these experts that we have in conference, all the participants. Thank you very much. And I'm really looking forward for the exciting sessions that we have ahead.
Absolutely. I'll pass on to Sid. I see he's smiling and he's gearing up to say something. So I'll now take a pause and exit this. Over to you, Sid.
Thank you, Vibhas. Very superb talk. It left us all enthralled, and it was way better than the practice runs. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.